Welcome to the first 2023 edition of VU Sports Wired, Vanderbilt Video Productions' premier sports talk show. My name is Bobby Kent, a Vanderbilt Hustler senior staff writer, and I am your host. I am joined by Jonah Barbin, Hustler sports copy editor. Since it has been a while since our last show, we will dive into the men's and women's basketball seasons so far, as well as discussing recent developments. The women's basketball team won their first SEC game of the season on Sunday, beating the Texas A&M Aggies by a score of 88-79. Kaija Harbison made history, scoring 41 points and tying Chantel Anderson for the single-game scoring record that she set back on February 8, 2001. Anderson was in the crowd for the game, making the moment all the more special. Vanderbilt's SEC record now sits at 1-7, and they are 10-12 overall, 13th in the SEC. Aside from Harbison's outstanding performance, it has not been a pleasant season for Vanderbilt, having dropped its first 7 games in SEC play by an average of 22 points or more. The program has faced turmoil roster-wise as well, with multiple season-ending injuries to key players Jordan Cambridge and Ayanna Moore, and the transfer of freshman top recruit Amari Williams. Vanderbilt next faces Missouri on Thursday night. So first, Jonah, what impressed you most about Harbison's 41-point game? How was she so successful?
Yeah, Harbison just came out firing, Bobby. It was absolutely amazing to see. I'll read off the stats quickly. In 38 minutes, 41 points, 73% from the field, 50% from three. I mean, those are gaudy numbers. She really had it working from the mid-range. It was a great performance to see. In a season where you might say it's lost in many ways, a season where there's maybe not as many positive takeaways from the entire campaign, this is one of those games that you remember and you say, wow, this is a building block of this program. This is the kind of magic that we can bring back to Memorial with this women's basketball team. And the fact that Anderson was in the crowd for the game, I mean, what are the odds of that? I was told
special is that?
It was Alumni Day, but it's just one of those moments in sports where you say, look at that beautiful coincidence. It almost feels like a script. It was wonderful to see, and that embrace that they got, if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out on Twitter, of them hugging after the game. It was amazing. So, again, really had everything working. Harbison really put on a show and could indicate something going forward, but still a lot of work to be done.
Definitely. No, and to your point, I mean, she was strong the entire game with a strong mix of aggression. She drove to the lane for layups, and she pushed through contact while also taking what was given to her, right? She had a really strong mid-range game that was working, and she had 30 after 3 quarters. I mean, that's just absurd, right? So that's like you said, that's a big moment for the program, especially with the way this season has gone. But congratulations to Kaija Harbison. That's a huge performance, and definitely to do it in front of someone who had the record before, that's pretty cool. So now a win in the fashion that Vanderbilt did over Texas A&M, even though they're the bottom feeders of the conference, can give this team a confidence boost going forward, right? How would you salvage, in your mind, how do you salvage a season like this one that's been so unwieldy?
Well, for me, it's not about salvaging at this point. I think Shea Ralph understands that this is a process. I think she knew that when she was taking over. And just look at the talent disparity in the SEC, right? LSU is 21-0, 9-0 in the SEC. South Carolina, 21-0, 9-0 in the SEC. When's the last time South Carolina's lost a game? Years, right? Yeah. I was actually covering the Vanderbilt-South Carolina game where Vanderbilt got doubled up. It was like 96-43 or something like that. It's crazy. It's crazy. Right now, the talent disparity is large in the SEC. Everybody but 3 teams in the SEC has a winning record. 2 of the teams with a losing record, Texas A&M, who Vanderbilt beat, and Vanderbilt themselves. So clearly this is a team who's working from the bottom of a really, really strong conference in NCAA women's basketball, and it's a long ride to the top. So a game like this shows you it's not really the opponent that's impressive that you beat, but when you get an individual player performance like that, no matter who you're playing in the SEC, that's impressive, and that can show you kind of where Shea Ralph's player development skills are at, and it's only getting higher. And what I'll say about Shea Ralph, too, is I've been to a fair number of her press conferences, and just the energy she has, the devotion she has to all these young women, the way she really has shaped this program. And she comes with that winning pedigree coming from UConn. So I think this program is no doubt in the right direction. It's not this season, it's probably not next season, but this program will be a contender one day.
Definitely, I would agree with you. It's funny you mentioned that about how much passion she has, because there's a girl in one of my classes on the team, and I messaged her and I said, great win, and she said, it's about time we got one. And I think they all sort of feel that, of like they want to play really well for Shea Ralph, and she has put a lot into this program, and so have the players, and they work really hard and to see them get a result like that is really great. But yeah, it's been a really tough season so far for them. But there have been players have stepped up. I mean, Sasha Washington has stepped up with almost 10 points a game. Obviously, Kaija Harbison, scores about 20 a game. Ya Chambers, the senior, scores about 5 a game. So there's some, there are players on this team that can step up at moments and make something happen. But it really hasn't been a great year overall. And obviously, the SEC is so strong. But hopefully, they can build on this one and maybe snatch a few more SEC wins along the way.
Yeah, Bobby, you would hope that they can and at least continue to kind of take these more lessons away, maybe get some big performances. They've had some big performances by Marnell Gerard as well. So there are definitely building blocks here, right? And again, I think the most important thing, especially in college sports, is having the right coach, right? Because programs go up and down, talent comes and goes, especially in college. But when you have a coach at the helm who's created the right culture, who people want to play for, and are slowly kind of ingraining their roots in the program like Shea Ralph has been over these last couple of years, I think the sky's the limit from here.
Definitely. Next, we transition over to men's basketball. Across the first 20 games of the 2022-23 season, Vanderbilt has gone 10-11 and 3-5 in SEC play, which places them 9th in the Southeastern Conference standings. In terms of national rankings, Vanderbilt is 91st in KenPom, 10th among SEC teams, and 93rd in net, a metric used by the NCAA to rank teams for the NCAA tournament. Vanderbilt is 1-6 in Quad 1 games, 3-4 in Quad 2, 1-0 in Quad 3, and 5-1 in Quad 4. The Commodores are 2-4 on the road and 7-5 at home this season. Vanderbilt's 3 SEC wins have come against then number 15 ranked Arkansas, South Carolina, and Georgia. Without Scottie Pippen Jr., who left for the NBA after last season, Vanderbilt has seen most of the charge fronted by the 4 of its most experienced players, and Miles Stute, Liam Robbins, Tyron Lawrence, and Jordan Wright. However, injuries have plagued this team, with Liam Robbins out for another 3 to 4 weeks with a sprained ankle, and up-and-coming freshman forward Lee Dort also sidelined by injury. Coming into this season, the big storyline was how will Vanderbilt replace the production of Scottie Pippen Jr. Now, Jonah, how has Vanderbilt tried to do so?
Yeah, look, Bobby, hindsight is 20/20, right? But there was a lot of people saying, oh, Scottie's leaving, but this team's going to get better, right? Good recruiting class, some 4-stars in there, and everybody was saying, oh, Pippen controls the ball so much, get other guys involved, Jordan Wright looks so good in the NIT, right? Get Stute cooking, and this team will be just fine. At the end of the day, there's a reason that why Scottie Pippen left to be in the NBA. He's in the G League right now. That's a hard stage to get to, okay? Not a lot of guys are going to get there. So the fact that people were criticizing maybe Scottie for having the ball too much or saying that there was other guys going to step up, there was clearly going to be a decline in this team without the likes of Scottie Pippen Jr. He's a special talent and really a legend around these halls. So what I'll say is I expected somewhat of a regression. Now, Jordan Wright really hasn't played up to par this season. The Robbins injury is huge. That really, really derailed this team, especially going in. Remember the night that we learned that Robbins wasn't playing was against Alabama. That was when, you had just beaten Arkansas. You were feeling like, hey, maybe this team could go on a bit of a run now. And to lose him is huge. The Lee Dort injury is big, too. Stute's had a lot of big threes in a lot of games, which has been impressive to watch. Stute's been fun to watch. But again, the underperformance of Jordan Wright, you had that whole scenario where Stack was benching his veterans and saying, I want to see the young guys play because the old guys are not giving me what I need. It's issues like this which just make me think this team has a long way to go. Again, I think Stackhouse is a really good coach. I think he's the right guy for the job. But it's been just a kind of it's been the combination of injuries and underwhelming performances from the veterans that have just made me think, wow, how are we going to possibly fill these Scottie Pippen size shoes?
Yeah, no, you have a very good point there. I mean, you're right. It has not been easy at all, right? I mean, to try to fill his shoes in a little bit, they tried to bring in Ezra Manjon, right? Transfer from UC Davis, brought him in via the portal. He's an undersized but very quick guard. He shows flashes of brilliance at times, especially in their win against Georgia. I mean, he had one, I think it was like on a 6-7-8-0 run by himself, getting to the lane. I mean, he averages about 8.7 points per game on 47% shooting, but he's not really, still can't be that main guy that Scottie Pippen was. And they've leaned, like I said, like we've said, they've leaned on the experienced players. Miles Stute is rather inconsistent. He'll have some great games where he makes, 7 threes, as he did in Vanderbilt's last game against Texas A&M for his career-high 22 points. But, he'll have cold nights as well. And Jordan Wright hasn't necessarily been the guy who stepped up as much, but although he's had some great games as well. Liam Robbins, like you said, the injury has just been absolutely brutal for this team. He was averaging 17.5 in 4 SEC games before the injury and 3 blocks. So big in that big interior presence down low. And then Tyron Lawrence, though, I do think he's stepped up a lot, definitely. So this team definitely needs complete efforts to win every night. But the freshman trio has been impressive, so that is a little bit hopeful. So in your mind, Jonah, what wins and losses have stuck out to you the most?
Yeah, well, obviously the Arkansas win is huge, right? That was a come-from-behind victory at Memorial against a ranked opponent. That really sticks out to you as, wow, we're going in a great direction. I don't give too much. The Alabama loss, it was disappointing, but again, with Robbins out and the way Alabama's playing right now, and we have a game coming up, we'll talk about that in a second, against them again now in hostile territory, they're a tough team to beat. Other games that stick with me in the SEC schedule has to be Kentucky, right? That's a game where you felt like, hey, Kentucky.
I don't know what is going on above us, but continue, yes.
Kentucky could be a team that gets beaten, right? Mm-hmm. You thought, hey, they've lost some games. They had already beaten Tennessee, by the way, and Vanderbilt had hung around with Tennessee in Tennessee, so you felt, hey, maybe Kentucky's lost some games. They're not as good this year. Is this Vanderbilt's time? And it did not go well. And that was kind of the game where I took a step back from starting to think we could contend with teams like that. The Kentucky game was a reminder to me of where we're at. It was almost like when you hung around with a few teams and then you say, okay, we throw out the Alabama game because of the injury. You're like, wow, maybe we can compete with upper-class teams in the SEC. And a game like that, John Calipari reminded me, I don't think we're quite there yet.
No, I would agree with you. And it especially speaks to, I think, being 6-1 in quads 3 and 4, so we can beat up on the bad teams, right? But no wins only 1 win so far in quad 1, and so those are some of the best teams in the country, right? And we're not exactly at that level right now. But to say though, the losses have been close. I mean, Vanderbilt hasn't lost by more than 10 to one of those teams, which has been big, and they've been in a lot of the games, right, throughout the games. It's usually like you said before we began the show, it's usually the flat end of the first half and then a flat beginning of the second half, and you just can't have that happen, right? So this has been, it's been an interesting season for Vanderbilt, and obviously started by losing to Grambling State, you lose to Southern Mississippi. It's tough and it compounds. So what do you think the outlook looks like for the rest of the year?
Oh, it's tough, Bobby. So you've got a really, really tough game coming up against Alabama. That's tonight, actually. I don't see how you win that game, right, at this point. Brandon Miller has just been, well, he's one of the best players in the NCAA right now. Against Vanderbilt, he had 30 points on 10 of 16 shooting. Really, really amazing player. This guy's going to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft, so watch him now while you still can in college. The thing that was interesting, though, if you're looking at Alabama, is they just lost a horrible game. They lost by 20 points to Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, yeah.
Oklahoma. Unranked Oklahoma lost by 20 points. Really bad look. Brandon Miller did not play well. So the one question coming into this game against the Commodores and the Crimson Tide is, what version of Alabama are you getting? Are you getting the version that dominates SEC teams on a nightly basis, or are you getting the team that drops a 20-point game to an unranked team? So that'll be interesting to see. Alabama shot 36% and 37% from the field, respectively, in their last 2 games. So that's the only hope you have in a game like that. If Vanderbilt can be on their A game and Alabama doesn't bring their A game, that's the only way you win this game. If Alabama shows up in full force, it doesn't matter what Vanderbilt puts on the floor at this point. You got a game against Ole Miss at home on Saturday, I believe. That's a winnable game, but you still have Tennessee, Kentucky, LSU in the schedule. There's a lot of not soft landing spots. You're thinking about the NIT. That's what you're thinking about at this point. By the way, once you lost to Grambling State, forget the tournament. That is an unexcusable loss, and Vanderbilt the first thing they need to fix is their non-conference play. The SEC is tough. Although I did say SEC is the worst conference in shooting the 3.
Interesting. Wow.
Which is crazy.
Wow.
With how many powerhouses they have. So
Definitely.
Just think about that. But anyway, the SEC is really tough, and it's tough once you get here. You got to fix your non-conference play. right? So to make the NIT, it's gonna be a tough road at this point.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, I honestly would just echo everything you said. I mean, it's going to be tough, right, to make the NIT, to finish above 500. They're going to need to probably go on another run in the SEC tournament like they did last year to sort of cement themselves above 500 to get to the NIT. I mean, this team could be dangerous when they make the NIT like they were last year. You know, when Vanderbilt's shooting the ball really well, when Miles Stewie's getting going from three, Ezra Mignon is making plays happen, Jordan Wright is aggressive, and, you know, maybe if Robbins comes back later, this team could make a run in the NIT, but they just got to get there, and getting there is going to be very difficult, and we'll see if they can do it, but let's hope. So.
Yeah, and let me say, the NIT is certainly nothing to sneeze at. I know it's disappointing when we're talking about, I know a lot of people were saying, oh, this is our year to make the tournament.
No,
it'll come, but look at who won the NIT last year, Xavier.
Exactly.
And look where they are now.
Teams use the NIT as a building block. Some teams view it as a disappointment, some use it as a building block, and Xavier's used it as a building block, and now they're a top 15 team in the country, so anything can happen is what we're trying to say. So, all right, that'll do it for this week, this first 2023 edition of VU Sports Wired. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week.